This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for isms. Now, every time I start this podcast, I have to remind everyone that my concept of isms is about finding positivity to get through whatever our circumstances are. And so many of us are sitting around waiting for that special thing to fall down from the sky to solve all of our problems. But the reality of it is, we're the only ones that can solve the problems, especially the ones that are internally ours. My guest today is Mark Firehammer. I love that last name. It's just like
Thanks, Karen.
it ignites everything about you. I met Mark through podmatch.com, and thanks to them, I get to meet wonderful people like Mark and have them on the podcast and have them tell us things about problem solving and making it day by day. So, welcome.
Thank you, Karen. It's good to be here. And the Podmatch community is a great community where we just meet such interesting people. I'm
Absolutely.
really grateful for it.
So, tell us a little bit about your background because in your bio, it starts off you're a lifelong creator,
Mm,
you're a storyteller, and a problem solver. And it's interesting that in my career, I've been a problem solver for everybody else.
right.
But when it came to me, I'd be hitting my head up against the wall, like,
Yeah.
what, and I would turn to people and say, can you help me? And they'd go, oh, no, you know how to do it.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, there is a difference between helping your clients, helping your students resolve problems. But when it comes to yourself, oftentimes we just get caught in that maze of life. So
Yes, indeed.
give us some background.
Yeah, well, my background is very diverse. I mean, it's very different than your average person, probably for a lot of reasons. But I was a musician for 20 years. And as my adult life, so 18 to, almost 40. And but prior to that, I knew even as a very, very young child, 5, 6 years old, that my general modus operandi, the way I was operating in this life, was to not allow what I can see and hear and what I can find to supposedly learn from. I've never let any of those things tell me what to do.
Wow.
Right? This is why I'm so glad that you brought this up because as my partner Katrina says, she's this world-class movement expert. She owns a Pilates studio. She's on the staff at the dance school in University of Hartford. And what she always says to her clients when they come in, and this relates to me, and one of the reasons I was attracted to her was, how is your body feeling today? Right? And getting them to check in, not emotional, but what are the sensations that you're feeling? And what I learned from her, because I asked, what are you actually doing right there? And she said, well, I get them to check in first because no one knows more about their body than their body. And that's true, even if that person is not fully conscious of what their body's trying to tell them.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Definitely does.
Yeah. So let's fast forward in my life. I'm no longer a child. I start writing songs. And because I'm a storyteller and I have always thought of myself as a bard's role in history is
Right.
to observe and report, not judge, not, change people's minds, but to observe and report. And that's what I was doing when I was traveling around the country, writing these songs about the people and places and the things that I witnessed, and then getting people to reflect back at what they were experiencing when they heard those songs. And what's really interesting about it is sometimes because they all listen and watch with their own lens, their own experience filters it. And one song can mean two completely different things to two different people. And as an artist, it was something that I had to consciously decide to not be attached to. Instead, be fascinated by it. Just before we came on, Karen, I thought about the title of your podcast, Avoid the Maze. And I thought this is a perfect opportunity because some people see the word maze as a puzzle that someone puts you in, like the mouse trying to find the cheese.
Right.
And but others people think of it as a different thing, a trap or, whatever. I'm curious, and I think I may already know, but I want to hear from you. What does that word and your choice of it mean to you?
To me, it's the journey through life.
Yes.
Okay. And you get a choice no matter what you think,
Yeah.
which way you turn, or if you just want to stop and go, I'm lost. I'm all by
Right.
myself. Um, and when I came up with Avoid the Maze, it was because up until I was about 55 years old, I was following a path that I thought everybody else wanted me to take.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would be at those walls too often because I would, no, I don't really want to be here, but my mother told me to, my husband told me to, my children are dictating it.
All right.
But it was my
Culture
youngest
itself.
son. Yeah, it was my youngest son who said to me, Mom, stop pleasing everybody. You choose if you want to go right, left, turn around and go back, or if you even want to jump over the wall.
Mhm.
And it was like, these are things I've been telling you your whole life, and I haven't been doing it. And I find
Right.
that when I have guests on like yourself, even if your path has been pretty pain free and you have followed all these different places and really didn't get stopped too many times, there's still a reflection that we have something in common. And
Mhm.
that's what I want people to understand. It makes no difference how high you climb up the ladder, you're going to have something in common with everybody else on all those different steps.
Yeah, right down to, the basics. We're human.
Yes,
There is always a common thread.
exactly. Exactly. So, as a child, obviously, you must have lived in an atmosphere, a cultural atmosphere where your parents allowed you to use your thoughts and follow your steps. Whereas so many of us, I think my parents did to a point, but I kept hearing in the back of my voice,
Right.
Mom and Dad want you to do this.
Yeah.
Mom and Dad want you to think this.
Well, I've got news for you, Karen. I did not grow up in that environment, but this is why it's so great that I didn't. My worldview, my lens of the universe and life in general is that we choose our family, we choose when and where to be born, and the soul comes with it. And I chose this life specifically because my parents, especially my father, tried in every way, like culture itself, to force conformity. Right. And the only way that I knew in this lifetime, even as a very, very young child, that I was going to build the muscles, the strength that I would need to spend my entire life marching to the beat of my own drummer, not for the sake of doing that, but for the sake of making sure I'm following my voice. I'm grateful for their attempts to make me conform, and they were very creative about it. So some people will go, that must have been awful, but it's what I chose. Does that make sense?
It does, but not all of us have that reserve inside of us.
I absolutely see that every day.
You know, I was always the obedient child. I'm the
Yeah.
third of three, two older brothers, and my parents just expected me to be this well-behaved little girl. And when I went away to college, my parents said to me, You're going to get a teaching degree
Yeah.
because that will save you your whole life. And went in and signed up for my classes and started taking communication and broadcasting. Not one class for education. And at the end of the 2 years, I had my associate's degree. And I called my parents. I said, graduation is coming up. And they go, You finished 4 years in 2 years? And when I told them what I did, they said, We're not coming to graduation. You can
Oh,
come home because to them, I had wasted their money.
right.
Now, this was back in 1968, 1970,
Yeah.
and there weren't many women in communications and broadcasting.
Yeah.
So they felt like I had wasted their money. After that, I fell into the pattern of what they wanted. But many, many years later, I went back to school and got my complete degree and my master's in communications. And it was at that time my mother said to me, I'm so proud of you. You did what you wanted to do.
Mhm.
So sometimes those things that we're hearing in our head, maybe I could have said to my parents when I went away to school, I'm not going to do education. This is what I'm going to do. And maybe they would have been more supportive.
Yeah.
Instead, because I'd sort of did it behind their back.
Yes. Yes.
So when your parents saw you driving your own ship, how hard was it for them to like let go of the reins, or did they? Did they continue?
They never let go of the reins. Yeah. Even in the very end, um, my dad even tried because he was not direct at all. He was emotionally unavailable, and which is fine. He was a good man in other ways. I found role models in other men, so I'm not at all harmed by it. He even tried to say, okay, here's the deal. If you don't do what we tell you to do, which is get the 4 year degree, you won't get any inheritance. You only get inheritance if you have a degree. And if your siblings get a bigger degree than you, they take your share of the inheritance. So they turned it into a competition, which was no surprise because I was the youngest of three, just like you. Uh, they used to make us compete against each other, doing the multiplication tables, which wasn't fair for me, the youngest. But I saw the strategy coming 20 years in advance. And I knew exactly what he was doing. And I wrote him a very sweet letter and I said, I appreciate your efforts. I know you're coming from a place of caring, but you don't have anything that I want or need. So you can save the energy and not go down that path. And in the end, here's the poetry of it all. They didn't have any inheritance left because, like many people in this culture, they lost their health so dramatically in just being conformist and not doing what they have to do to maintain a body that serves
Sure.
them. They spent their entire retirement savings on healthcare. So I was okay. Even if I did, if there were millions of dollars, I wouldn't have cared because I don't need it. Driving my own ship has given me the things that I need.
So you're a great storyteller, and storytelling is extremely important, I think, more so
Yeah,
in this day and age for us to understand each other.
yeah,
And some people say, oh, you shouldn't bring all this out because when you do, you're hanging your dirty laundry up or you're boasting about something. And, you know, it's for each of us to hear what is necessary to help us become
right.
better. But talk to me about problem solving because we are in a world where everything is very stressful and we turn that stress into problems. Like you said, your parents spent all their money on healthcare, and many of us are getting ourselves ill over the stress and not knowing how to get out of it. So, do you have any tips about problem solving?
Yeah, I have a method that I use, but in order to really make it meaningful right now, um, I think I want to talk about it in terms of self-care, physical
Sure.
self-care. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, I'm 62 this year, and my partner, like I've already explained, is a brilliant body mechanic. She can watch someone walk by and pretty much accurately diagnose any problems they have because she knows the physical body that well. And as I started to approach 60, I'm a guy that has never gone to the gym. I've always lived an active lifestyle, but I didn't go to the gym. And compounding that with from 40 to 58, I was sitting in conventional furniture like almost everybody else. Chairs, cars, desk, seats, dining room table, the sofa, right?
Right.
All that sitting, they say sitting is the new smoking. Well, that was very different than my life prior to 40, which I was always touring and playing music and a lot of reaching and bending, crawling around on the floor, more like a child's life.
Yep.
So I didn't need to go to the gym because my life was the equivalent of the gym. So getting to the problem solving. When I began to feel my body say oof, you know that word, right? Oof. Bend over to tie your shoes.
Yep.
Oof, right? I knew that, okay, I need to just slow down. And I could have gone down a fear place. Oh my God, I've got a disc problem. Or I could just get into fear. But instead, I just slow it down and say, okay, what did I just feel? What was the sensation? Describe that to myself. That's the first step of my formula. I'm going to reflect on that. Have I felt it before? If so, what was I doing before I felt it? And if I hadn't felt it before, um, where do I think that's going? Is it an indication of something? And in self care, if something is new, the oof, it's always caused by the same thing, excluding traumatic injury. Okay, let's just set that aside. It's coming from a lack of use of that part of the body or a nearby part, like back pain is often caused by knee troubles, right? So this inventory process, what did I feel? Have I felt it before? What have I found to be true about that, right? At that point, I know what I can do to seek a solution. And in this case, I would reach out to Katrina and say, here's what I felt. Here's what I discovered about that. And I now need some guidance and some information on what the remedy is. She gives me all that information, and I don't just do it. I do it very slowly and gently. And again, what did I just feel? What do I find is true about that feeling? So, what I'm looking for is that worked because my body's saying, yep, you're on the right track. So, inventory your feelings about the sensation. Evaluate the sensation. Is it a harbinger of the past, something I didn't do, or something I did do that was too strenuous? Or is it a sign that the future is going to get worse if I don't take action? Because it's more about what I haven't been doing. Does that make sense? So, inventory,
Absolutely does.
assess that, and then make decisions and gather information to execute a plan. Now, here's the moral of this story. At 58, I had onset of left heel plantar fasciitis. That's what the doctor told me. Right knee tendonitis, right hip pain, and then occasional lower back pain. And I'm like, this is unacceptable. I went through, what am I feeling? Have I felt it before? What's the cause? And for me, it was very clear. You're not using the body in the way that makes it not go oof, right? In 28 days, using prescriptions of movement that Katrina and I fashioned, all of those problems went away. And in 62 now, 4 years later, I still don't have any of those problems. And then the maintenance of it moving forward is as simple as the things I was doing before I had the problem. Getting onto the floor more, making sure that I'm bending my arms and legs and knees and ankle and toes in all the directions that they can go on a regular basis, not going to the gym,
Right.
but playing on the floor and moving my body around. And I feel better now at 62 than I did at 45.
It's interesting because right before we went on today, I broke my shoulder Christmas Eve. So I'm
Mm.
still going through physical therapy for it and everything.
Mhm.
But right before the show, my arm just didn't want to move. And I was sitting here thinking, now this is crazy. Like,
Mm.
where's this pain coming from?
Mm.
I haven't done anything. And so I started doing my stretching exercises. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, I didn't exercise. I didn't do the right kind of exercising this past weekend. My oldest son was visiting. And yeah, I was moving my arm. But basically, like you said, I was sitting on the couch with him. We were in a restaurant. And as soon as I realized that,
Made
I
the
wasn't
connection.
doing my self-care this weekend.
Right.
All it is putting my arm out and stretching it and putting it over my head and keeping it moving.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, it's not painful anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes we don't think about that, whether it be a physical or an emotional pain. We think, where did this come from? Oh my, I'm either sick or I'm depressed. We don't think of how we can change that on our own. Again, we're
And
looking for
and take
somebody else.
responsibility for the need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So exactly what you were doing with the movements to get rid of the back pain, the knee pain, the plantar fasciitis, you could do that if something emotionally came about as well.
Exactly true. Yes.
You have to find the tools that say, okay, how can I change my thinking?
Right.
How can I? So, what do you recommend for that since you're a problem solver?
Yeah, that's something that I've simplified for myself, and many of the folks in my orbit that have asked me about it, it really helped them a lot to oversimplify it because getting back to the maze metaphor, the way I look at the maze is we're brought into this culture believing that much of what we need has to come from outside of us. We need to ask an expert because well, I'm an expert at this, but I need to go to you because you're an expert at that. That okay. So the emotional piece is how I problem solve with emotions is get into the gap between the stimulus and the response. The average person will argue with me about that they're not in charge of their feelings. And I'm like, well, I hear that. I totally hear that. But imagine for a moment that you just say, okay, what immediately preceded that emotion? And then put a gap and then step into that gap and say, what did I do in that gap? It doesn't take much practice to realize, oh my gosh, I actually was triggered. I reflected almost instantly on something that I'd already experienced, and whether it's accurate or not, I associate it and then I assign the same emotion. So my advice is slow down, take a breath, feel the emotion, but when the storm of that emotion, if it's a strong one, passes, don't walk away from this moment. Get into that gap and be the technician that analyzes. I'm going to open the hood and see what was between the stimulus and my chosen response. Because, as Deepak taught us, Deepak Chopra, there is infinite choices within the gap. And I think Wayne Dyer used to talk about that too. Infinite choices within the gap. That's one of the earliest books I ever read was I'm Okay, You're Okay by
Yep,
Wayne Dyer.
yep.
You probably remember that. We're kind of in the same generational window.
Well, what's interesting is since I've been coaching, um, I have a different relationship with my younger son
Yeah.
because until I started coaching, I was always mom. Okay.
Yes.
Why did you do it that way? Or don't you know how to do it or whatever?
Mhm.
And now he may call me with an issue
Yeah.
and I'm a listener
Yeah.
and I wait for him to say, aren't you going to either tell me what to do or whatever? And I'll just say to him, no. How do you really feel about this? You've given me all this dialogue, and it's sort of because you're so upset, it's sort of like all mushed together. So, was it your fault, their fault, somebody else's fault? Nobody's.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I will hear him say, oh no, they're not at fault. No, I guess I could have done it this way or that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But usually, what will happen if it's a continuous, and usually when he calls, it's a continuous all day long of, I need help, I need help.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize what I was doing, but it's what you're talking about is like opening it up and saying, okay, why am I feeling so sick about this? why can't I get back to where I was before that first phone call? And I can take those few moments and look almost like looking down into this big cylinder and say, oh, that's what I need to get rid of because that is now going to
Mhm.
trigger me.
Yeah, I love it. That is classic hindsight, feel, felt, found thought process. Did you learn that from, because you mentioned that you were parenting differently after you began to coach. Did you learn something that was articulated like feel, felt, found in your training?
I did, but it wasn't even so much that. Just about the time that I finished my training, he had moved away from home for his career.
Yeah.
And I realized as he was driving away that first day, I'm still his mother, but he's an adult. He's
Yeah.
1,000 miles away. And just in my head, I started thinking about all the training that I had, that
Right.
it doesn't do him or me any good to tell him what to do.
Yeah.
Even when he'll ask, certain things like, how do you think I should clean my grill because it's, so dirty? And usually I'll say, well, you can Google it because that gives him the freedom to figure it out.
Mhm.
Or I'll say, well, it probably should be cleaned every time you use it. Then I'll hear him go, oh, really? I've been using the grill for the last 6 months, haven't cleaned it. Probably not going to get it cleaned. But I let him come to the conclusions. And
Yeah.
it's a different, it's different for me as a mom,
Yeah.
but it's so much better for him.
Sure, sure. Well,
But
you
it's
must have done something very right even before you gathered that skill because he trusted you enough to come to you and say, "Hey, mom, not hey, coach.
yeah, exactly.
Here's what I'm going through." So
Yeah.
bravo on that.
Well, this weekend he was telling his older brother that, mom's really a good coach. And it was like, oh boy, thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
so
I admire you and all the people that make the choice that you're making to go into coaching. That's a path that I thought about for about a half a second, and I
yeah.
knew that it wasn't for me. Uh, and I'm just grateful that there are people out there that want to do that because there are people that need coaches. So thank you for that.
Well, when I decided to do it, I decided to do it more for myself
Yeah.
than for my clients because I wanted to learn from the other people who were saying, oh, I'm in the wrong relationship or I have to get out of
Yes.
this job because I had been there and
Right.
I didn't know how to get out. And then when I started taking the certification, I started looking back and instead of saying, I should have done this, that
Yeah.
this is what I can do now.
Yeah. Right.
And again, that helps me with my clients because
Yeah.
I don't dwell on what you should have done. Can't go back and change it,
Right.
but you can change where you are now. And that's what I loved about reading your bio because it was like, let's not worry about the problems we haven't solved in the past.
Yeah.
What is going on now? Where are you in that maze? You
Right.
made a right turn and you should have turned left. Should,
Yes.
you're experiencing going to the right. Now
Yeah.
evaluate that before you make another turn.
Right. Well, one of the things that you saw in the bio then was myfeelness.com. And this speaks to why I chose not to be a coach is that for me, I have to do something that can benefit more than one person at a time. It's the one to many strategy. So those prescriptions that I mentioned about solving the foot, knee, hip, and back
Right.
problems, there's 7 movement groups. And we didn't invent any movements. They're the same movements you see people doing at the gym. But the magic is the orientation of them as a group that's focused on a very specific thing, helping the relationship between the ankle and the knee, for example. We've created a website called My Feelness where you, based upon the oof that you feel, whether it's bending over, looking over your shoulder to back the car out of the driveway, getting in and out of a chair, like at the office or the car, whatever you say I need to fix, The movements are organized for you in a prescription that you follow 10 minutes at a time until you solve your own problems. So now the world can help themselves to that set of prescriptions for whatever makes them go oof in the morning.
Love that. I absolutely love that. I mean, one of the things that I know that I need to do on a daily basis, which I didn't do for the last 2 days,
Right.
having family in town. Um, I need to ride my stationary bike. It
Right.
loosens everything up for me.
Right.
And it helps my breathing. And so yesterday after my son left, my husband and I, all of a sudden we looked at each other and said, we're exhausted. We
Yes.
both got in bed. We fell asleep for 4 hours. And I never napped during the day. And when we both woke up, we were like, it's so beautiful out. We didn't even enjoy the day and whatever. And so that 4 hour nap, we sort of wasted because we started thinking about all the things that we had missed out on.
All right.
And it wasn't until about 2, 3 hours later that we looked at each other and we said that we're both starting to feel better. And it was because we weren't concentrating on, oh, we wasted the time. No, we needed that time. We were exhausted.
Yeah.
We had woken up and said, we're refreshed, and we would have gotten our self care in that mode.
Yes, right.
And we both know that. And,
Yeah.
and so when we started to feel better, we both looked at each other and we said, we've got to remind each other.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need that little reminder. No, it's okay. Keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way you pointed out that you drop the bag. You kind of drop the bag on the self-care.
Yep.
And one of the things that I always encourage people to do is be aware that your belief system is not even necessarily that conscious. And the one that came to mind while you were talking just then was that if I'm not busy all the time, I'm not being
Not,
fill in the blank. It's a negative belief about being busy. And because when we're in the maze of life and culture,
right.
there's so much to do. The first bag that we drop is the self-care one, right? So if you say, all right, I'm going to take that belief of if I'm not busy, I'm not fully living my life. People will think I'm lazy, whatever that is, and replace it with a better version. The reverse would be, um, I do what I want to do after I've taken care of myself. That's how I can show up for everyone in my life. It's like the airplane
Yep.
where the stewardess says, put your mask on first and then put it on the child or the elderly person in your care, right? So the belief system of self-care first is not at all selfish. It's
Um,
selfless. Yeah.
well, and coming from the generation, you know, being born in the 50s and, growing up in the 60s, we that self-care was considered selfish. Okay.
Yes.
Because it was defined differently.
Yeah.
Self-care meant, oh, I'm going to go get a new hairdo and I'm going to get my nails done. And
Appearances.
yes. And remember my mother, I remember my mother saying to me sometimes when I would say, especially when I was in college, oh, I'm going to go take a nap. I'm really exhausted. And she'd look at me and she'd go, it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. What do you mean you're going to take a nap? I can find things for you to do. And that became part of keeping busy.
Yes, yes.
If you're busy, you're not going to be tired anymore.
Yes.
And I lived most of my life that way. And yesterday, my husband and I, we were mentioning it to my older son when we were at breakfast. And he said, what are you going to do today? And at that point, I said, don't know yet. And my husband said, well, she'll find something. She'll either go scrub the toilets or whatever.
Oh, he planted all these suggestions.
Well, but he knows my personality. And I just looked at him and I said, I don't want to do that. And he goes,
Yeah.
what? Then don't do it.
And don't do it. I love it.
But I am one of those people that, boy, if I'm not doing something, what are the neighbors going to think? Well, they can't see in my house. They don't know what
Yes.
I'm doing. And so
Yes.
I've had to train myself to realize You don't have to be busy 24/7.
Yeah.
What are you proving? You're making yourself ill at times doing
And
that.
just because you're not physically busy doesn't mean that your mind is not creatively crafting some new reality for you or others.
You are absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Now, how can my listeners find you, learn more about, your self-care and problem solving?
Actually, I've made that super easy. If you know my name, that's the diving board,
Yeah.
markfirehammer.com, right? From there, you get to see the my Feelness website, which is for people who don't like to work out but don't like to feel bad in their body.
Okay.
Fitstreams.club is the full-on fitness website that we built during the pandemic. And that's for those that are already fitness ready and they're not complaining when they bend over to tie their shoes.
Okay.
But for me, the most compelling and exciting thing to follow in my life right now is the music and the books that I'm writing. I started writing songs again January of this year after 20 years taking a break.
Wonderful.
And that's exciting because I'm writing the songs that a 62-year-old would write instead of the songs that an 18 to 39-year-old would write. But the book is on the front page of the website. It's called The Echo and the Voice. And it is that classic allegory tale of the struggle between conformity and nonconformity. Hearing your voice, living your truth, or doing what everybody expects of you. And they say when you write a book, it changes you forever. And the daily process of writing, I commit to 1,000 words a day minimum, has changed me in ways that I couldn't even begin to describe. And I'm so grateful for. And we're publishing it in real time. So there's book excerpts. So I'm not trying to hide it from
Yeah.
anyone. When the book finally comes out, people that are following the blog will already have a really deep sense of the story of the main character. His name is Jonas Wilder.
Okay. I like that.
So
Sounds,
markfirehammer.com.
and I'm going to recommend to our listeners, you are so right about when you write something down,
Yeah.
it can change us.
Yeah.
I started blogging about 14 years ago. And in the beginning, friends and family who read my blogs, they would say, why are you putting all this out there for other people to see? And it was because it's helping me. They don't have to read it. It's out there. If they go and read it, that's their choice.
Yes.
But
They're
every,
revealing their own belief system.
but every time I wrote something, I could feel my growth. It would
Yay.
be, I don't want to do that again, or I want to do that again. How can I make it happen again? And
Yay.
I have just gotten my youngest to start blogging because he holds so much in him and he will get very overwhelmed. And I've said to him, just try it. Because when you put it out on paper, I said, you don't have to publish it.
Yeah.
Keep it private if you want. And he has said, Mom, I don't get depressed like I used to.
That's great.
Because you're stopping yourself. And
Yeah.
that's the wonder of it. So I can't wait to read your book.
Well, I look forward to seeing your name on the list and we can stay connected in so many ways.
Absolutely. And I've got to learn more about the movements and keep myself going so that
Yeah, go check out myfeelness.com. We're literally talking 10 minutes at a time, twice a day.
sounds wonderful. Well,
That's a
thank you.
beautiful thing. Yeah, don't have to change your clothes and take a shower and all that stuff.
Oh, that's even better.
Because if I had to do that, it would get in the way of my midday nap.
Ah, well, and naps are good. So
I love my naps.
thank you again for joining us today, Mark, and have
My
a
pleasure,
great
Jay.
day.
Thank you. You
Bye
too.
now.